Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. I'm the Reverend William Levwood. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the minister here at Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. Now, as we begin our service, I want to invite you to silence your phone, to take a deep breath as together we center ourselves for worship. We open in welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on and their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Warren McLean. I'm your worship associate for this morning. My pronouns are he and him. I hope you've got a name tag, or if you have not or have put your name on the Zoom name tag. If you need help with that, let us know in the chat. If you aren't new to Accotink, and I said if you are not new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people that you haven't seen for a while or haven't spoken to for a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission of being a welcoming church and reach out. You may find a best new friend. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in a transition are more open to new friendships. That means that your new best friend might just be here this morning, and it might be your chance to get to know them before someone gets to know them before you. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour at the end of the service in person. And we're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
I want to invite you to rise now in body or in spirit, and we'll recite together the words that you see on the screen. These are from our mission statement. Together, we care in community. Together, we grow in spirit. Together, we act for justice. Thank you. You may be seated. So we're in our month of exploring curiosity, and we're having a special service today called a question box service. So people submitted questions to me ahead of time, and I'm going to answer those questions and talk about those questions. But I want to give you a little preview because I may ask you to answer some of the questions as well. Because it's not just, we're Unitarian Universalists. It's not just about what the minister thinks about these things. So just to give you a preview, there's questions about how far our welcome goes, if there are limits to that. There's questions about calling. my calling as a minister, but you can think about that for yourself. You know, what called you to your vocation? There's a question about what do we think happens when we die? This one you might need a little time to think about, so I'm going to give you this one early. If Unitarian Universalism were a kitchen appliance, which kitchen appliance would it be and why? So don't shout it out yet, but think about it. And then what can we do about advocacy fatigue, about being tired from fighting the good fight? So I'm sharing those with you so that you can be musing on them as the rest of the service goes on, and then I'll share my thoughts, and I'll have you share some of your thoughts as well. So for our Time for All Ages, I just want to explore a little bit more this question of what question word feels like your question word. And we had some wonderful responses in the chat that I may share in a moment. But first, I want to start us off by sharing a story from when my child, who's 10 now, was 2 or maybe even less than 2, and started asking why all the time. And I thought I was really clever because I didn't want to go down that chain of why, and then the why, and then the why. So I would just say, why not? So one day, my child said, why such and such? And I said, why not? And she said, Daddy, why do you always say why not? And I said, Haya, why do you always say why? And then you saw like a moment of the gear turning, and then she said, why not? That might have been the first, but not the last time that I was bested by my child in wisdom and insight. So I'm curious if anybody wants to share. And I have a mic here. You know, what question word do you privilege? Do you lean towards? And why? Anybody? Obviously, my under 2-year-old was into the why question at a certain point. Anybody?
I am a why person.
You're a why person.
Oh gosh, am I a why person?
And why are you a why person?
Why not?
Well played. Well played. All right, I'm going to bring the. Okay, I'm going to bring it to Shirley, and then we'll do Diane, who's behind you, who wants it too.
I'm a what person.
A what person?
I used to be a why person, but I find that is threatening to other people when you ask why.
Ah.
And so I decided if I was get anywhere, I said, what do you want? What, and so.
Nice. A what person?
I'm a how person. So I guess when there's a problem, it's easy to point out problems, but to figure out how to deep in and
Yeah.
solve is another issue. So that's why I'm a how person.
Yeah, and some nodding heads here. All right. Anybody else? Yeah?
So I'm also a why person, but I also ask a lot of who questions, like who's not being heard, who am I speaking for, who has the power and who doesn't, who's not here.
Oh, okay. And then we'll go here, and then we'll go there.
I guess I'm a how person too, but mainly because I'm always curious about creative processes.
Nice. Which is a little preview of Lynn's question that she gave to me. Creative person who's curious about the how.
I guess I'm a what person because it's always been, what am I missing? What's the perspective of the other person? What's the story I'm not hearing yet? Because I grew up very easily focused and single visioned, and I could never understand why other people had a different perspective. It's like, obviously I'm right. Why don't you see this?
So
What am I missing?
So the what broadens you. I love that. I love that. All right. I don't know if we got all of them. I'm going to share a couple that were shared from the chat earlier. Except people are writing in the chat, which then punches it down. We have a how. Kate McDevitt shares, my favorite question is how. It's hard to make a change without a how. But as a child, Kate also shares that Kate's first and frequently repeated word was that? Kate Wanderer shares, my favorite is why. I want to know the secrets of the universe. All right. Oh, and there's another how. How is my question word. How from Catherine Burnett, Kathy Burnett, how can I understand and apply my need to support others?
Asking, what is your favorite question word? It may seem like it's just for fun, and it is, and also the answer. I mean, the question word can reveal so very much. Who, what, when, where, why, how. First, the word who. Who are you? And who made you what you are? If you're a who asker, that says you are concerned with the context of a person or people's and how that context or identity makes the person or people's who they are and guides all the other question words. Like the seminary class where the professor, Reverend Dr. Dorsey Black, took 3 whole class periods just for people to introduce themselves. A seemingly ridiculous choice until you realize he was teaching the whole time, underscoring the importance of context that each learner brought into the classroom, teaching that context was as important as the material that would be covered in class. Because the context that would determine the responses to the material and create the collective who of the class, of the learning environment, of learners learning together. What is a very fact-oriented question word. What happened? What caused it to happen? What will happen now? What calls forth facts in the form of nouns? What is concrete? What is boxy? What is a very square 4-letter word? A word for courtrooms, a word for laboratories. When? When is about time? Like who? It's the context question. For the answer of when, the when can determine everything else. If I lived in a different time, things would be so very different. 3 years ago, 50 years ago, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 200 million years ago. 3 years from now, 50 years from now, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 200 million years from now. yesterday, tomorrow, today. Where? If you're an asker of where, you realize that the environment can determine everything. No great blue herons in Death Valley can't grow coffee in Wisconsin, but under certain conditions you can drink it there. Coffee in Wisconsin makes child slave labor in Peru. Snow on the mountain makes flowers in the deserts of Utah. The Sahara Desert makes the Amazon rainforest thrive. One where makes another where, makes another where, and so on. Why? Why? What? But what is to scientists in laboratories? Why is to philosophers? Why this and not that? Why now and not then? Why here and not there? Why is about the causes of causes? Why is about the direction we've gone? Why is about the direction we want to go? Why is a guide? How? How, asks the child, who takes the mechanical watch apart so they can attempt to put it back together again? How can the skyscraper climb higher into the air? How can the airplane race across the sky? How can the Rubik's Cube be solved? And how fast? And how can we slow climate change? How can we heal? All these question words say so much. We think of them as the heart of asking. Until we realize the question tells us at least as much as the answer.
So I mentioned that this is a question box sermon, and I received some questions earlier, and I'm going to do my best to answer them, and I'm going to invite you to reflect upon them as well. So the first two came in just before the service, so I'm going to start with those. This is from Diane Bates, this first one, who says that our greeting is reminiscent of the Statue of Liberty. Not a bad thing. I was just wondering about the scope of acceptance. Say, would Donald Trump and the deplorables be welcome? What is the range of the scale of our values? Are they so political that they exclude seekers who may have a different view on the range of the position? For example, most UUs favor abortion rights. Some don't endorse 9-month abortion, setting a different limit. Can they still be UUs? Many or most favor transgender rights, but some of those feel that competitive sports unfairly target biological women. Is that range of difference problematic? And then Diane shares, hopefully we don't let our values be so narrowly interpreted that this is our dogma. Just wondering. So the simple answer is all are welcome, that our welcome is inclusive of all, no exceptions, because our love is inclusive of all, no exceptions. But I want us to also look a little deeper and also acknowledge that our non-creedal commitment as Unitarian Universalists is primarily theological. That what we really are welcoming are a diversity of theological viewpoints. I'm not saying we don't welcome other things than that, but that's really what's unique about Unitarian Universalism, is our theological welcome to diverse theologies. And while we are non-creedal in that way, our covenant, as a covenantal faith, calls us to live our values. And those values do lead us somewhere. You can certainly dissent. You don't have to agree, for example, with my answer to this question. But I'm not sure that you should always expect welcome of all of your viewpoints. And that is rooted in love as well. Because love is not just about supporting each other through affirmation and acceptance, but also about calling each other into covenant, into living our shared values. And that can include pointing out, arguing, putting forth the idea that some views are unethical. We welcome all, but perhaps not all views, because our values call us to love, and love calls us to call into question views that harm others. So that's my answer to that. You might think about your answer as well. And that's an answer in and of itself, because there's no papal bull from Reverend William Levwood, right? You get to hold your own views on even the question of how much and what is welcomed into Unitarian Universalism. So moving on to our next question, which moves us into a little bit of looking at my own self. These are personal questions, at least to a certain degree. So Lynn Snyder points out that the arts and religion have a long and interrelated history, sometimes glorious, sometimes not so much. And asks, at what point in your life did the two intersect? And when did the shift for professional dominance become a clear path for you? So many of you may know that I was a modern dancer, that I studied that and practiced that for 15 years, and did it in high school, college, and professionally for 5 years. And I realized at some point that it wasn't giving me everything that I needed, so I took a year off. And then I never went back, at least to performing and creating dance work. And then I really was kind of in a limbo for a while. And that's when I realized that I wanted some of the things that dance had provided for me, particularly that it was a spiritual practice. And so I went looking. I was raised Unitarian Universalist, so I went exploring. I tried Tibetan Buddhist meditation. I tried other forms of meditation. I also was teaching or facilitating the youth group at the UU Church in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so that was part of my exploration that started to move me. I started reading voraciously about different world religions. And then a particular turning point was when I took a class on countering the Omer offered by a dance therapist in Charlottesville. The Omer is the period between Passover and Shavuot, 49 days. And there's a practice to look at what are called sfirot, which are roughly similar to chakras, energies. And you study one each week. And we would study them with chanting and prayer and movement. And that was a turning point for me. Although it took me to the question of when did it become my vocation, it took me quite a number of years after that to really commit to that. And in fact, even after I had been accepted and was planning to move to Berkeley from Boulder, Colorado, to attend Star King School for the Ministry, the Unitarian, one of two Unitarian Universalist seminaries, I turned to my soon-to-be wife and said, "Are you sure that this is the right choice?" And I don't know if she rolled her eyes, but But her voice had the eye roll in it when she said, "Are you kidding me? You spent all your time. You could have had your graduate degree if you just started 3 years ago in seminary. So let's get on with it." So that brings us to the next question, which is from Peggy Eckerman, which is, why did you decide to become a minister? So I want to share first the kind of superficial level, which is, at some point I realized that ministers get to do a lot of different kinds of things. When I was a dancer, I tried to explore with my side job other parts of myself. So I did a lot of childcare, but I also was a baker. I was a finisher of fine wood furniture. And I noticed I was kind of going back and forth between more extroverted and more introverted jobs. And I realized that ministry, you get to do a mixture of that. You get to the introversion of preparing what you're going to say to people on Sunday. You get the performance of delivering your sermon. You have one-on-one interactions with people when you're providing them pastoral care. You have committee meetings or small group ministry meetings where you're facilitating those. So just I was attracted to the diversity of things that ministers get to do. Now, as soon as I started seminary, or maybe when I turned to my wife and asked that question in the summer before, I realized, who can do all of that and do it all well? I was terrified of all the different hats. So the deeper answer to the question of why did you decide to become a minister reminds me of a story. When I was a modern dancer dancing with a dance company called the Zen Monkey Project, there was a moment we were at someone's house outside, gathered in a circle, and someone said that they really felt that they deserve to be an artist, that they had a right to be an artist. And in that moment, that kind of rankled me. And it planted a seed. I didn't say anything at the time, but I was thinking, some people deserve clean water and adequate food and health care. And, so it kind of rankled me to think that anyone would say that they deserve to be an artist. So I think that planted a seed of ministry, of what many ministers would call the prophetic call to ministry, the call to justice work. So fast forward many years later, when I'm primarily involved religiously, not in Unitarian Universalism, but in something called Jewish renewal, which brings the mystical parts of Judaism and the ecstatic parts of Judaism out of the very orthodox communities and into a liberal religious context. And I would go every week to study the Torah portion, the Parsha for the week. And what I found was that it helped me just get through the week. Life can be hard. And the experience of exploring that wisdom with others from the Torah would help me get through the week. There would be like a little portion, a little nugget of wisdom that would help me through the week. And I thought, I feel like I could help others find that nugget that would help them get through their week, and that would be a valuable thing to do. There also was a lot of prayer and chanting, to go back to the arts and the spirituality, which I did not grow up with as a Unitarian Universalist. I don't know if you all remember, those of you who've been in Unitarian Universalism for a while, how we didn't have so much, like the meditation we did earlier, that wouldn't really happen 30, 40 years ago. And I wanted to bring that into Unitarian Universalism. And lucky for me, a lot of other people wanted to bring that, so that by the time I was serving a UU congregation, that was already blossoming and flowering. And the other thing that happened in that Jewish renewal community was that there was a Havurah, a small group of people who met, and that was such a nourishing community. I made all my closest friends in Boulder, Colorado through that Havurah. So I just want to point out that what caused me to become a minister basically is Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church's mission statement, right? I became a minister to care in community, to grow in spirit, and to act for justice. Peggy Eckerman also asks, what is the most important part of your profession? And I want to invite you all to think, and I'm going to share 2 words, so I wonder if there's even like a word or 2 that rises up when you think about either your vocation in the world or how you live your life. The 2 words for me that I think are most important about ministry are listen and nurture. And then nurture, I think, is what ministry is about. That's what I root my ministry in. There's one other part about it, which is I'm also listening to something else, which is what our Unitarian Universalist values call us to and call us to be. And sometimes those can be in tension. Sometimes we have growing edges, and a particular community has a need to grow into being better about living a certain value or a certain part of being Unitarian Universalist. But you listen to both as a minister, right? You can't just charge ahead and say, you should be doing this, just do it. Nor can you relinquish the imperative to live into those values because your community isn't ready for that. You have to do them together. And sometimes that means you do it slowly, but it also means you do it resolutely. I do have just a quick story that relates to this. When I was an aftercare teacher for a year. I was an assistant teacher at a Montessori school, and then I was an aftercare teacher at the Boulder Jewish Day School. And we didn't have very many kids coming. A 9-year-old and her 6-year-old sister and a 2-year-old. And I used this listen and nurture in that whole year. I didn't bring anything in particular to the aftercare. I said, what do you want to do? How do you want to spend our time? And it took a while for us to figure that out. And eventually, the 9-year-old decided that she really wanted to bake. And then we spent a long time collecting recipes. I think we spent at least a month just collecting recipes because that's what she wanted to do. She wasn't ready to bake. She wasn't saying, okay, let's bake them. She said, let's look at some more. And then when the time was right, we started baking. So I think that illustrates as well how I approach ministry. That 9-year-old, by the way, is 24 now. I looked them up on Facebook when I remembered that story, and their sister is 21. They're doing good things in the world. All right, so I'm gonna ask you before I share, because I'm gonna share what I think happens when we die, but again, I'm not sharing that like an authority figure, right? That's just my thoughts. You have your own thoughts. And as Unitarian Universalist, yours are equal to anyone else's thoughts. So does anybody want to share what you think happens when a person dies, when we die?
As someone who's been through the death of 2 husbands, a great-grandmother, grandparents, parents, and as the daughter of a physicist, I have to say, in contrast to my father, the physicist, I don't believe that we go off in heaven. That's an abstract concept. Mm-hmm. That in fact what happens is our bodies decay, it comes back into the earth. As we say in the closing speech, between time and death and space between the stars. And I can live very comfortably with that. That means I don't know how the world was created, but that it's all part of it. And I got very upset when some neighbors thought they were doing a favor and trying to tell my 3-year-old and my 4-year-old that their father was up in heaven and looking down at them.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to point out, Reverend Dr. Dorsey Blake would be very proud how Shirley gave context. Did you notice how she gave context before she shared her viewpoint? It's important where we're coming from and what's informing our viewpoint.
So I've been thinking about love a lot. And I saw a quote about grief that I really liked. Like, what is grief but love surviving? And I think that gives me a lot of comfort when I'm feeling grief, that's still a connection that I have. I also don't believe that we go to heaven after we die and just decay, but we still feel that love, and it's painful, but it is real.
Liz, you could have quoted our hymnal that has a May Sarton poem. That has a May Sarton poem that ends with the line, "Our mourning without end." It's called All Souls. It's in our hymnal.
I guess it's not a belief, but I have a feeling that yes, we do decay, but we live on through the memory of others. And so many times people want to leave a legacy, a building with their name on it, a chair, whatever. And we do live in people's memories. But I think the memories that are best are the little ones, not the new building, not the chair of journalism at some big school. It's the little ones. It's when Grandma chased me off the pier and I jumped in the lake, and we share that with friends and other family members. So I do believe we live on, but just in memories.
Thank you.
I don't discount heaven as a whether it could be real or not, and I grew up believing it very much, and that's why I was a good person back then, and now I'm a good person because of now, here and now, and the reasons. And if we die, and when we die, whether or not heaven exists or how we define that, even because that could be crazy in how you define it. For me, it's the way I'm seeing it now, and a lot of the discussions here have led to me this way, is we have, like you said, the memories we share with the people and how we're remembered, but also the impact we leave in our example. And even if they don't remember where that came from, that will reverberate through history. That will reverberate through the rest of how this world exists, and that impact, whether it's a good rhythm or a bad rhythm or whatnot, is up to you, up to us. And I love the idea that we are, in a way, the universe going through a chemical reaction and waking up and thinking of itself. And I just like that.
So notice that this particular question gets us into really theological territory. Timothy pointed out that at some point in his life, belief in heaven made him a good person, I think is how you said, and now something else does. This was a real criticism of universalism, of universal salvation. The idea that everyone goes to heaven was that, well, then what's going to make people good if they're not trying to avoid hell? But there are other things. And I noticed when I was a chaplain resident, which I did for 2 years, that people's theological frameworks have a tendency to work. They work for them. They're a constellation of different things, and they really work together. And that's why if you tug on one of them, they're likely to resist. Although also in chaplaincy, you notice when one of those constellations might be falling apart, right? Might not be actually working for them anymore, and they're restructuring. So I'm not even sure I need to share. Y'all shared such rich sharings. I'm not sure I need to share, but I'll share just a little bit. In my internship committee described my theology as kayak.com theology. And what they mean by that is that I'm going to use any theology that will get me where I'm trying to go. And then I'll drop it if I need to go somewhere else on a different day or a different time. That being said, I was thinking about this question, and I was thinking about, what do I believe? I'm an atheist about certain images of God. I'm agnostic about most things. Can we get an amen to being agnostic about most things? I feel like a lot of you would agree with that, resonate with that. But I also have to say that if I'm a theist, it's a theist that, it's a Star Wars theist, right? That there is the Force, or chi, or prana, or the spirit of life. There's something flowing through the universe, and we can connect with that spirit of life, that spirit of love. And as I was thinking about that, preparing for today, I was looking at my dresser. And I realized that my dresser isn't alive in the classical Western sense. In other words, you could say it's dead. But when I open to this belief that there's a spirit of life flowing through the world, then I experience even the dresser, even this wood right here, as pulsing with life, pulsing with life force and energy. And I guess this is what I think happens when we die, that we continue to pulse with life force, both from our bones, from the transformed and transforming physicality of us, and, as many of you have pointed out, from the legacy of our living, the immaterial aspect of our being, that perhaps is why the word spirit is a useful word. And I imagine many of you are the same in that you can bring to mind and heart and experience any loved one who's ever died and feel them as an energy, as a spirit, as an essence. That no one is ever completely gone, that you can experience them still being here with you as a spirit or an essence. And I don't share that to try to take away the grief. There's also a way they're very much not here. Many particularities of them, perhaps the parts of them that you personally didn't get to know, you can't access those once they've passed away. Though they may be alive for other people who knew them, knew that part of them. So death is still death, grief is still grief. There's some kind of a change, some kind of a transformation. And I'm going to share this, this is not in our hymnal, but 2 pieces from the poet Marge Piercy are. This is slightly adapted, just 2 words. It's her poetic version of the Kaddish, which is the mourner's prayer that Jews say in mourning and to honor loved ones. And that prayer is all about sanctifying and magnifying God. It's not about the person. But I like Marge Piercy's take on that. It works better for me as a UU, although I love also the sound, especially the sound of the Kaddish in Hebrew. So Marge Piercy says this, writes this: "Look around us, search above us, below, behind. We stand in a great web of being joined together. Let us praise. Let us love the life we are lent, passing through us in the body of the generations and our own bodies. Let us say Amen. Time flows through us like water. The past and the dead speak through us. We breathe out our children's children blessing. Blessed is the earth from which we grow. Blessed the life we are lent. Blessed the ones who teach us. Blessed the ones we teach. Blessed is the word that cannot say the glory that shines through us and remains to shine, flowing past distant suns on the way to forever. Let us say Amen. Blessed is light, blessed is darkness, but blessed above all is peace, which bears the fruits of knowledge on strong branches. Let us say Amen. peace that bears joy into the world, peace that enables love, peace over the people everywhere. Blessed and holy is peace. Let us say Amen. And we'll close up with two more short ones. Kate McDevitt says, is stealing and adapting this question from my 9th grade world history teacher. If Unitarian Universalism were a kitchen appliance, which one would it be and why? In the interest of time, I'm not going to let you share, but I'm just going to say that it would be a blender. Right? That's self-explanatory because we mix together so many sources and different things. And then also, I also think it may be an oven, just because an oven is actually kind of a chalice, right? Oh, some blenders are ovens, Shirley says. They can heat things. And I think it's also a kitchen table. I don't know if that qualifies as an appliance, but I think that's where we gather to blend and share, right? Okay, and then Kate McDevitt also stealing a question again from Billy Porter, gay icon Billy Porter, who asked it of John Lewis. What can we do about advocacy fatigue, about being tired from fighting the good fight? Now, you might think this is not an easy one, but I actually think this is an easy question to answer. Because the answer to what we can do about advocacy fatigue, about being tired from fighting the good fight, is to join a Unitarian Universalist congregation. That's the best thing you can do for that compassion fatigue. It's the best thing because you can't do it all, but you can do your part with your gifts, one strong body all together. And you can trust others to do their parts with their gifts. Right? Teamwork makes the dream work. And you can pair your gifts together in collaboration. And also, the other way that joining a Unitarian Universalist congregation is important for that compassion fatigue is the music and the meditations and the conversation and the loving support. And because you're reminded that fighting the good fight isn't all that life's about. It's important, but it's not all that life's about. Life is also about making soup for someone when they're sick. It's also about reading and discussing good books with others, especially if they've been banned. It's also about raising children and youth. It's also about growing old together. It's also about grieving our losses together. So if you want to be able to keep fighting the good fight, join a Unitarian Universalist congregation and participate fully in all that it has to offer and all that you have to give to it. Let's remain standing, and we're going to extinguish our chalice with these words from David Bumbaugh. Feel free to hold hands or just put your hands out in an orant if you prefer. All together, this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity. I hope that this has been nourishing for you. I hope that you continue to question and take your questions into conversation with each other during our coffee hour and throughout all the many ways that we gather together. And especially if you find that you're going through a rough time, if this service brought up any challenging feelings for you, please reach out to me and reach out to each other and bring your challenge or your grief so that it can become an expression of love between us. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so. Now that we've been nurtured here by this inclusive and welcoming community, may we go out into the world and live our values and enjoy some coffee. Happy Sunday.